Hi, I'm Jen Hand, your non-diet nutritionist to help you find food freedom. We are doing a double dose today, YouTube channel, video, and a podcast. And the topic I want to dive into today is how do you actually know when to stop eating? A lot of times when we're in the diet world, it's very prescribed. You follow this plan, you're counting this many points, you are weighing or measuring. It's very prescriptive and you follow it exactly, or you try to follow exactly. And when we begin to let go of dieting, it can be really challenging to know, well, how do you hear when to stop eating? And how do you know how much is good for your body? And when exactly am I supposed to stop eating if I'm not following a food plan? So I wanted to give you a couple of approaches and a couple of ways to think about how you know when to stop eating when you're trying to let go of dieting and find your normal around food. So typically, shifting out of the diet world is a big transition because we don't know how to listen to our body. And this whole world of intuitive eating is honestly not really intuitive at first because we're so far removed from hearing our body's signals and trusting them that we're like, I don't know how to listen to my body. I don't know how to respond to the cues that my body is giving me because I'm literally not hearing anything. So know that the signals are there. It takes a little bit of dusting off, a little bit of practice, trial and error, and experimentation to begin to trust yourself. So it reminded me of the Spanish lessons I'm taking. So I lived in Ecuador probably 12 years ago now, and I lived with a family who didn't speak English, and I took Spanish classes, and I was very good at speaking. I became very good at speaking Spanish. And now it's been, 12 years later, I've used Spanish maybe 3 times since then on different trips. And it's very, very, very rusty. And so I started Spanish lessons last week, just conversation. And I realized it's still in there. Like the feeling of dusting it off, the feeling of it being very rusty, the feeling of like trying and almost like it's in there. I know what's the word, what's that phrase, and just practicing again and again and getting a little bit more comfortable. And really, it's such a great analogy for this relearning how to listen to our body because it is in there. Our body has cues, our body has signals. They've just gotten so buried beneath all the rules and the shoulds and the supposed tos that it can feel like, well, I'm not sure if I'm hearing anything, or you might hear it, but your mind talks you out of it. Like, no, you shouldn't need that much food, or you shouldn't be hungry because you ate 2 hours ago. So it is this dance of learning how to hear yourself again. And the 3 approaches I want to give you are in order of most listening to your body to, and I don't want to say least listening, to most structured. So most listening to your body into least structured. There's 3 approaches. And the reason I am giving 3 approaches is because we're all at different points on our journeys. And I'm doing a holistic weight loss 4-week program right now. In this first foray into talking about weight, bringing that into the intuitive eating conversation. And it can be really challenging because sometimes we need more structure, sometimes we need more freedom, sometimes we need more guidance, sometimes we need more allowing. And so it's learning how to dance with that. Where are you? What is it that you need? And where are you starting from? Always meeting ourselves where we are and knowing that there's no wrong. So if you need more structure, if you need more guidance, it's okay. I started there. I needed guidance. I needed structure. I was a little bit diety at first because that's usually where we start. We start in our little box of comfort and security, and it takes some trust and practice to break out of it bit by bit. So the first one is honoring fullness. And I'm not going to go into this one because I have done a podcast and a YouTube video on this, which I'll link to below. But know that fullness is the art of learning how to hear fullness is the approach of most listening to our bodies, because it's literally honoring cues, checking in with ourselves, learning to hear our body's signals. And I want to add into this fullness conversation, this approach, is that the best way to hear is to make sure we're sitting down to eat, make sure we're putting things on a plate, making sure we are being in the experience of eating versus grazing versus just grabbing spoonfuls out of the ice cream. I was going to say jar, dish, bowl, gallon, thing, carton. That's what I'm looking for, carton. And allowing ourselves to visually see what we're eating. And the brain is such an important part of registering, communicating to our stomach, communicating to our body, releasing the fullness hormone, leptin, and starting to create those pathways of that conversation that via that visual cue, oh, this is what I'm eating. So if you think about like grazing on chips all day or grazing on pretzels or having things here and there or eating when you're making dinner, it's really challenging to hear fullness because we're distracted, because we're not quite registering how much we're actually eating because it's just kind of, oh, here, there, spoon, bite, handful kind of thing. So one of the best ways to begin the conversation around fullness and to practice is to create this experience of eating. You're sitting down, you're having a plate, you're registering, hey, this is what I'm eating, and then beginning that conversation. The second approach is a little bit of a combination of structure and listening. So this is to guess in the beginning and then get feedback. And what I mean by this is, let's say you're at dinner and you're like, I'm not sure how much to eat. So you guess, you take a big spoonful, helping of mashed potatoes, you take a chicken breast, you have 7 slices of asparagus, pieces of asparagus you put on your plate. And then you're like, okay, that's my best guess. And I'm going to get feedback post meal. Another example, you are making your lunch for work or for you're working at home, you're making lunch. You're like, okay, I'm going to guess I'm going to have a half turkey and cheese sandwich. I'm going to add a side salad and I'm going to grab a handful of pretzels and put them on my plate. That's my best guess. And then I'm going to get feedback. And what happens here is that in both examples, you can get feedback to understand, yes, that was enough food, or no, that wasn't. In the lunch example, I know now that for me, typically a half of the sandwich won't cut it. I'll be hungry an hour or two later. So that feedback for me would have been, maybe I was trying to eat a little bit less or trying to think about I shouldn't eat a lot or I shouldn't need that whole sandwich. But next time I know that to keep me full for a couple hours, to keep me satisfied and fueled, I need a whole sandwich, or I need more salad, or I need to add some fruit or some fiber or whatever it is. So it's like you're getting feedback post meal, either right after, or as you go into your day. So let's say with the dinner, you ended up having half a chicken breast, 2 spoonfuls of mashed potatoes, and 3 pieces of asparagus. And then an hour and a half later, you realize, I'm feeling kind of hungry again. I'm getting a little bit crazy. I'm getting a little bit snacky. And the feedback potentially is, maybe I needed a whole chicken breast. Maybe I needed to add more vegetables. Maybe I needed to have a little bit more mashed potatoes, some starchy carbs for satiation and contentment. So it's looking at, you guess your best guess. Maybe it's a guess from what you learned in the diet world, because that's where we start. Maybe you learn, okay, I can have, just one tiny carb and a protein and some vegetables, and that's my best guess. So it's meeting yourself where you are and just taking your best guess and then getting feedback. And with this, and really with this whole approach of learning to find a way of eating, of stopping that works for you, is that you have to start anywhere, because we can't necessarily think our way into the answer. So a lot of times we'll get that analysis paralysis, like I don't know how much food I need. And we try and think our way into the answer. And what we really want to do is feel our way into the answer. And that takes practice. It takes a little bit of uncertainty, a little bit of like, well, was that it? Or was that it? Or was that enough? And trial and error and keeping that feedback loop going, because we cut ourselves off from here up, and we use our mind to tell us, you should eat this should be enough, you're having this portion. And we want to bring our body into the conversation to say, hey, what is my body saying? Physically, did that feel like enough? And will that keep me fueled for a few hours? So you're bringing your body into that conversation. And when I say start anywhere, what that means is that we have to make any decision in order to get some feedback. And so there's no wrong in this experimentation in the sense that you're always going to get the feedback. And typically the pattern is that we err on the side of less when we eat and when we're getting out of the diet mindset and learning how to hear our bodies, because we're afraid. And normal eating can look like, oh, that's too much. I shouldn't be eating that if I have to lose weight or if I'm not happy with my body. And we can err on the side of less. And so just know that going in, that sometimes the default is because we're afraid. And so we err on the side of less. So in that sandwich example, for lunch, I have half a sandwich, I have a little bit of salad and a handful of pretzels. For me, that would have been, when I started in my first few years, that would have been me, because I was very afraid of eating more, like the bread and the sandwich or the cheese or the pretzels. Like that was a stretch for me. And I learned through my own experience that, I need to actually eat more to carry me through a little bit longer so I don't get hungry in an hour and a half or 2 hours. The third method is the most structured, and that's the plate approach. And so what that is a quarter of your plate protein, a quarter of your plate carbohydrates, and a quarter of your plate, sorry, that doesn't add up to a whole. A quarter protein, a quarter carbs, half veggies. And that's the most structured in the sense that it gives you a formula. And so if you're starting in a space where you need a little bit more structure, that might be a good place to try an experiment to say, right, I'm going to take the veggies, I'm going to take a little bit of protein, I'm going to take a quarter of carbohydrates, put that on my plate, and again, get the feedback. Some good questions to ask yourself in the feedback realm are, was that enough fuel? Do I feel satisfied? Was that enough to keep me going for a few hours? Do I feel nourished? Do I feel content? Do I feel physically satisfied? So the word satisfaction, satiation, nourishment, fuel, enough, like put all of those words into questions and see if you can get feedback to allow your body to begin to speak to you and learn to hear those signals. So again, the fullness approach is the most listening, is the best way, what am I trying to say? In order to rank them just to see where you are, least structured is honoring fullness, and I'll link to those two podcast blogs below. Second is the guess and feedback method, middle ground of structure and listening. And then the third, which has the most structure, is the plate method. So having a little bit of a prescribed way of approaching your meal and then getting feedback and assessing, how was that? How was that for my body, using some of the feedback questions? So which one resonates with you? Where are you? Do you need structure? Do you need more listening? I'd love to hear you. Comment below. And if you do have specific questions, absolutely ask them, and I will get back to help to aim to help you hear your body. So that's my intention, is to help you learn how to hear yourself, so you don't need a prescribed formula or someone to tell you do XYZ. You start to learn to trust those signals and those cues within yourself. So if you have comments, post them below. Thank you so much, as always, for listening, and see you next time.